The queen's pride. Across the endless stars, there was a kingdom that stretched further than the eye could see. At the heart of this kingdom stood a throne made of crystal and fire, a throne where no one sat with ease. For the one who ruled, it was not a gentle queen, but the fiercest being her people had ever known. Her name was whispered with fear and awe, for she was the alien queen, unmatched, unbroken, and full of pride. From the beginning, she was unlike the others of her kind. Where alien kings had risen and fallen, she had stayed strong. Where warriors had challenged her, none had ever stood tall after facing her gaze. Her beauty was dangerous, her mind sharper than any blade, and her power beyond measure. Every male across the galaxy dreamed of standing by her side, yet all who tried failed miserably. The queen rejected them all. Mighty warlords brought her treasures from dying stars, and she turned her head away. Commanders of fleets bent their knees, offering entire armies in her name, but she laughed at their weakness. Some even dared to challenge her, blades drawn and pride burning, but none lasted longer than a moment against her hand. To her, every male was the same, too arrogant, too selfish, too fragile. Her voice rang across her throne room many times, cold and merciless. "No male is worthy of me," she would declare, her eyes glowing with fire, "and none ever will be." Her people accepted her words, for who could argue? They saw their strongest warriors bow before her and still be cast aside. They saw her empire grow larger each year under her command. And so, the queen became a living legend, a ruler untouchable. Her pride became a shield around her heart, a wall higher than the tallest mountain. No one dared to imagine that such a wall could ever be broken. Yet, hidden behind that pride was something else. When the queen stood alone in her chambers, when the halls grew quiet and the stars shone through the crystal windows, a silence always followed her. She told herself she did not need anyone. She told herself that weakness lay in attachment, but still her gaze lingered on the stars longer than she wished. If her people could see her in those moments, they would not believe it. For the queen who rejected every male carried a shadow in her heart, one she would never admit. Rumors spread in the far corners of space. Stories of her rejections became tales sung in alien bars and whispered in secret meetings. Some said the queen had no heart at all. Others said she waited for someone greater than gods themselves. But all agreed on one thing: no one alive could ever be enough. Until the day came when a new whisper began to move through her empire. A whisper of a stranger, a being so different that even the boldest aliens grew silent when they heard his name. He was not a warlord, not a king, not a creature from a distant star. He was something the queen's people did not understand. He was human. The first time the queen heard of him, she laughed. Her court spoke of a fragile figure, a man from a small, forgotten world, a planet so unimportant it was barely marked on any map. "Why should I care for such a thing?" the queen said, her voice ringing in the throne room. Another weak creature trying to stand taller than his shadow. The aliens around her laughed as well, for to them, humans were nothing. But deep inside, the queen's fire flickered for just a moment. It was only a spark, small and unnoticeable, but it was there. Days passed, and the whispers did not die. Instead, they grew louder. The human was coming closer, crossing alien borders, surviving dangers that had killed others. Each time he lived where others had fallen, the queen's eyes narrowed with something she did not recognize. It was not fear, it was not anger. It was curiosity. When the queen stood on her throne again, her people watched her carefully. Her pride burned as always, her words sharp as blades. But behind her calm face, questions began to rise. Who was this human? How could such a fragile creature walk paths where mighty warriors had perished? And why, despite herself, did she want to see him with her own eyes? In that moment, the throne room grew colder. The queen's pride was unshaken, but the story of her empire was about to change. For the first time, the queen felt something she had not felt in centuries: a shadow of doubt. a spark of challenge, and in her heart, a whisper that no wall of pride could silence. The queen had rejected every male before, but soon she would face the one being who did not bow, the one who did not fear her, the one who would break the pride she had built her life upon. And so the legend of the human began, not with a battle, not with blood, but with a whisper that reached even the heart of a queen who believed she could never be moved. The human arrives. The queen's throne room was a place where silence itself bowed. The walls shimmered with crystal veins, alive with light from the stars beyond. Every warrior, every noble, every visitor who stepped into that hall carried fear in their chest. None dared to raise their eyes too high, for the queen's gaze was sharper than any blade. On this day, however, the silence was broken by whispers. The court spoke of the stranger who had crossed their borders, a being too fragile to be taken seriously. He had defeated beasts on barren moons, survived storms of acid rain, and slipped past assassins who never failed their mark. Yet he stood now at the doors of the queen's palace, asking for an audience. The doors opened, and there he was. He did not wear golden armor like the alien lords who had come before. He did not carry glowing weapons forged in dying stars. He wore something plain, a suit of cloth and metal, scarred and patched from travel. At his side was only a blade of steel, nothing compared to the burning swords of alien generals. He looked human, ordinary, fragile, yet there was something in the way he walked that made the room turn silent. The queen narrowed her eyes. Her throne was high above, her form glowing with power, her crown like fire. The human should have knelt, as every male before had done. He should have lowered his head, drowned in fear and awe. But he did not kneel. He looked up at her, calm, unshaken, his steps steady as he crossed the shining floor. Gasps rose from the courtiers, their voices trembling. Does he not know where he stands? They whispered. He is only a human. How dare he walk like this? But the human's eyes never left the queen. The queen's voice cut through the hall. You stand before me, human, in the house of gods and conquerors. Do you understand who I am? Her voice echoed, heavy and merciless. Yet the human did not flinch. I know who you are, he said, his voice firm but not loud. You are the one who calls all others unworthy, the one who rejects every challenger. The court froze. No one had ever dared to speak to the queen in such a way. Yet he spoke not with arrogance, but with simple truth. The queen's lips curved into a cold smile. You are bold, she said, but boldness is not strength. Men far greater than you have stood where you stand, and they left in shame or death. What makes you different? The human's eyes did not waver. I'm not here to prove I am greater than them, he replied. I am here to prove I am greater than myself. The hall grew silent. The aliens shifted uneasily, not understanding his words. The queen leaned forward, her eyes glowing brighter. Her pride was sharp, yet in her chest, something stirred, something she did not want to name. This human spoke not as a king or conqueror, but as if his battle was against the world itself. She rose from her throne, her form towering, her aura pressing down like a storm. Many in the court fell to their knees, but the human stood unmoved. The queen circled him like a predator, her eyes studying him as though she could tear apart his soul. You do not fear me, she said, her voice low. I do not kneel to pride, he answered. Gasps filled the hall once more. Some expected him to be struck down where he stood. But the queen did not strike. Instead, she laughed, a sound rare and sharp like thunder breaking the sky. You dare to define me, human. Very well. If you wish to stand, then you shall be tested. Her voice carried across the chamber. None have survived my trials, not kings, not lords, not gods themselves. You will be no different. But even as she spoke, there was a flicker in her gaze, a fire that was not only rage but curiosity. Something about him unsettled her, though she would never admit it. The human bowed slightly, not in submission but in respect. Set your trials, queen. I will not run, he said. And for the first time in centuries, The queen felt something she had not felt before. Not anger, not disdain, but the smallest shadow of doubt. The court erupted with laughter and disbelief. "Fool!" they cried. "He will not last a single trial. He is weak. He is nothing." But the queen's voice silenced them with a single word. "Enough!" Her eyes locked on the human, her pride unshaken yet restless. This was not like the others. She knew it. Something about him was different, and though she hated the thought, she could not deny it. Her pride demanded she break him, but her heart whispered a dangerous question. What if he could not be broken? And so it began, the human's journey into the heart of the impossible. The queen's trials awaited, her pride unyielding, her throne untouchable. Yet as the human stood tall beneath her gaze, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. For the queen who had rejected every male before was about to face the one challenger who would not kneel, the human who dared to defy her pride. The challenge. The queen's trials were not games. They were not meant for glory or honor. They were created to break the spirit of anyone who dared stand before her. Alien kings had tried them, their names once sung in stars, but now forgotten. Warlords, assassins, even gods of other worlds had taken the challenge, only to fall in shame. Now, it was the human's turn. The queen sat upon her throne, her eyes like burning suns, her voice sharp with pride. "You wish to stand as equal, human, then you will pass my trials. If you fail even one, your life ends here." Her words struck the court like thunder, but the human only nodded, calm and steady. "I understand," he said, his tone free of fear. The first trial began in the pit of strength. A colossal arena carved in a black stone, surrounded by towering walls that echoed with the roars of the crowd. From hidden gates, beasts emerged, creatures with scales harder than steel, claws that could shred warships, and jaws that dripped poison. No alien had ever faced them without falling to pieces. The queen watched closely, her lips curved in cruel amusement. "How will a fragile human survive what crushed even my strongest?" she whispered. The beasts charged, thunder in their steps, eyes glowing with hunger. The human did not run. He did not draw his simple steel blade at once. Instead, he watched calm, his eyes sharp like a hunter. He moved not with power, but with timing, rolling beneath one beast, climbing the back of another, striking at their weak points. The crowd gasped as the beasts screamed in rage, their blood staining the stone. When the dust settled, the human still stood, bruised, bleeding but alive, and most of all, victorious. The court erupted in disbelief. "Impossible," they cried. "No one survives the pit." But the queen raised her hand, silencing them. Her eyes narrowed, for she had seen something no trial had ever revealed before. This human did not fight with brute force. He fought with will, with cunning, with patience. And that unsettled her. The second trial was the path of endurance. A desert of fire and shifting sands beneath 3 suns, where the air itself burned and storms of glass tore flesh from bone. The queen had sent countless warriors into that desert. None had returned. But the human stepped forward without hesitation. Hours turned to days, the burning winds howled. His body weakened, his lips cracked, yet still he walked. He used what little water he had with care, found shelter in the shadows of rocks. And when storms raged, he dug into the ground and waited. Where others had died screaming, he survived with stubborn will. When he finally returned, stumbling, scarred, but still alive, the court fell silent. The queen leaned forward, her heart beating faster, though she told herself it was anger. No one had ever lasted so long. No one had ever returned, but he had. The third trial was the duel of blades. Here, the queen herself would test him, for no one had ever survived combat against her hand. Her throne room became an arena, the crystal floor glowing as the queen descended, her armor shining with fire, her weapon a spear of burning light. The human raised only his steel blade, plain, small, almost laughable against her power. The courtiers sneered, He will fall in seconds, they said. But when their weapons clashed, sparks filled the air. The queen struck with fury, her strength shaking the floor. The human parried, his arms trembling, but his eyes never leaving hers. He did not match her in strength, yet he moved with purpose, every strike timed, every dodge measured. The queen pressed harder, her pride demanding his defeat, but he stood, refusing to bow. Their clash echoed through the hall like thunder meeting steel. At last, the queen struck him down, his blade shattered, his body falling to the floor. The court roared in triumph, convinced the challenge was over. But the human rose again, blood in his mouth, his hands shaking. He picked up the broken half of his blade and raised it once more. "I will not kneel," he said, his voice quiet but unbroken. For a moment, the queen froze, her spear still in her hand. Never before had anyone risen after falling to her. Never before had anyone looked at her with such defiance and respect at once. Her heart clenched with something she could not name, her pride trembling for the first time. The courtiers shouted for her to finish him, to end the insult, but the queen stepped back, her eyes locked on the human. "Enough," she declared, her voice cold but unsteady. "You have survived where none have before, but the trials are not yet done." The human lowered his broken blade, his chest rising and falling, his face pale, but his eyes burning. He did not speak, but his silence said everything. He was ready, no matter what came next. And so the queen turned away, her pride still her shield. But deep inside, she felt something dangerous, something she had fought to deny for centuries. This human was different, not because of power, not because of glory, but because he refused to break. And that frightened her more than any warrior ever had. The clash of wills. The trials had tested his body, his strength, his endurance, his courage. But now came the trial that no weapon could win. The queen had seen the humans survive the beasts, walk through fire deserts, and rise again after being struck down by her own hand. Yet her pride would not allow her to yield. Not yet. If he could not be broken with blades, then she would break him with her will. The throne room was emptied of the court. Only the queen and the human remained. The walls glowed with the faint light of the stars, the silence thick, heavier than steel. The queen rose from her throne, her eyes burning brighter than the suns outside, her aura pressing down like an ocean on the human. Her voice was soft but sharp. "You are still standing, human, but do not mistake survival for victory." The human, bruised and scarred, lifted his head, his voice steady. "I never came for victory. I came for truth." The queen circled him slowly, her presence suffocating. "You speak of truth, yet you stand before me as if you are my equal. You're nothing but flesh, weak and breakable. One strike, and you fall forever." The human's lips curled faintly, not in mockery, but in calm defiance. "Perhaps, but what use is strength if it only bows to itself? Power without meaning is emptiness." For the first time in centuries, the queen felt her chest tighten. No one had dared to speak such words to her. Alien lords had begged for her favor. Warlords had shouted of their greatness. Kings had drowned in arrogance. But this human spoke differently, not in fear, not in pride, but in something she could not name. She stepped closer, so near that her shadow fell over him like a storm. Her eyes locked on his, glowing, demanding he look away. No one had ever held her gaze for long. Yet the human did not flinch. He met her eyes with his own, steady, unwavering. That simple act was louder than any blade. It was not defiance of a fool, but the will of someone who refused to kneel to fear. The queen's voice grew colder. "You think your will can match mine. You think your spirit can shake the throne I built on blood and fire." The human replied, his words quiet but heavy. "I think your throne is strong. Your rule is strong. But strength without challenge grows hollow. You reject every male because you fear no equal, but perhaps you fear finding one." Her hands tightened on the staff at her side. For a heartbeat, she considered striking him, ending his words forever. But she did not. Instead, something deeper burned within her, something dangerous. This human was not like the others. He did not seek her crown, her empire, her hand. He sought only to stand, unbroken, before her. The chamber trembled with silence, the weight of their wills clashing like storms unseen. The queen pushed harder, her aura pressing down, heavy as mountains. The human staggered, sweat rolling, knees trembling, but he did not fall. Every breath seemed to tear at his lungs, yet still he held her gaze. Each second stretched like eternity, each heartbeat louder than war drums. Finally, the queen stepped back, her fire dimming slightly. Her eyes narrowed, her lips a thin line. She had tried to crush him, to bend him, but he still stood. His body was weak, his scars deep, but his will was iron. And against that iron, her pride had found something it could not shatter. "Why?" she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Why do you not kneel? Why do you not break?" The human's answer came without hesitation. Because kneeling to pride is not respect. Respect is earned, not demanded. The words struck her like a blade. For centuries, her power had demanded fear. Her throne had demanded silence. And she had mistaken fear for respect, silence for loyalty, rejection for strength. But this human's words tore through the shield she had built around her heart. And in that moment, though she would never admit it aloud, a small crack appeared in her pride. The queen turned away sharply, hiding the storm in her chest. "You are arrogant to speak so, human, but your trials are not yet finished. Your will may stand, but your heart will falter, and when it does, I will see the truth of you." Her voice was steady again, her pride rebuilding its wall. Yet deep inside, she knew she had already seen something she could never unsee. The human lowered his head in respect, not in defeat. "I will face whatever trial you set, queen, but know this. Your pride may test me, but it will not end me." The queen's hands tightened, her eyes fierce, but the echo of his words stayed within her like an unshakable flame. And so, the clash of wills ended not with victory, but with silence. A silence heavy with questions, with tension, with danger. The queen returned to her throne, her pride still her shield. But as she looked at the human, still standing tall despite all she had thrown at him, her heart whispered a truth her mind could not accept. For the first time in her reign, she had met a will that refused to bow, and she feared not his strength, but what his presence might awaken inside her. Breaking the mask, the queen sat alone in her chamber, her crown set aside, the flames of the throne room far behind her. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the stars through the crystal walls. For centuries she had worn her mask with ease, the mask of unshaken pride, the mask of the ruler who needed no one. But tonight that mask felt heavier than ever. Her thoughts returned to the human, the one who had stood through her trials, the one who had met her gaze without fear. His words echoed in her mind. "Respect is earned, not demanded." Simple words, yet they pierced deeper than any blade. Why do they linger? Why do they burn inside her like a wound she could not close? She rose from her seat and paced the chamber, her hands tightening at her sides. "Foolish human," she muttered, "he is nothing, a creature of flesh and dust, no throne, no power, no crown." And yet, despite her words, her heart gave no comfort. The image of him standing, broken blade in hand, blood on his lips, yet refusing to kneel, refused to leave her mind. The next day, the queen summoned him again. The court expected fury, punishment, perhaps even execution. Instead, they found the queen strangely calm, her eyes colder than usual, yet restless. She looked down at the human and said, "You speak of truth. Then show me more. Speak again, human. Let me see if your words hold weight or if they are only air." The hall grew quiet. The human raised his head, his face scarred, his body still recovering, but his eyes steady. "You hide behind pride," he said, his voice even, But pride is only a mask. It keeps others out, but also keeps you in. A murmur ran through the court, the aliens shifting in disbelief at his boldness. The queen's eyes narrowed, though her heart struck like a drum. "How dare you?" she whispered. "You speak as if you know me. You are nothing to me." The human did not waver. "Then strike me down," he said, spreading his arms. "If I am nothing, end me now. But if you will not, then perhaps it is because you know my words carry truth." The queen's hand trembled on her weapon. The court waited, breathless, expecting lightning, fire, death. But it never came. Instead, the queen turned sharply, her cloak sweeping behind her. "Enough," she declared, though her voice cracked faintly. The court bowed, but whispers spread, whispers that the queen had been moved, whispers that the human had touched something none had before. In the quiet of the night, the queen found herself staring at her reflection. The mask of pride looked back at her, flawless, untouchable. But beneath that reflection, she saw something she had long denied. Loneliness. For all her power, for all her glory, she had stood alone for centuries, surrounded by fear, not respect, by silence, not truth. And the human's words, his defiance, his honesty, had cracked that silence wide open. The days that followed brought more trials. Yet each one revealed the same truth. The human did not fight for glory. He did not fight for conquest. He fought with heart. When others would betray allies for victory, he carried them. When others would demand reward, he asked for nothing. The queen watched, her mask in place, her pride unyielding. Yet inside, something was breaking piece by piece. One night, she summoned him not before the court, but in secret. The chamber was dark, the stars glowing faintly through the glass. "Why?" she asked, her voice lower than ever. "Why do you not seek power? Why do you not crave my throne, my hand, my empire like all the others?" The human looked at her, calm, steady, the same as always. "Because I do not need them," he said. "What I seek cannot be given by crowns or empires. It is respect, and it is trust, and it is truth." The queen's heart tightened. For centuries, no one had spoken to her without fear, without hunger, without lies. But this human did, and it shattered her mask more than any battle ever had. She turned away quickly, her voice sharp though unsteady. "You are bold, human, perhaps too bold, but do not think my pride has fallen. I am still queen, I am still unbroken." The human bowed his head slightly, not in submission, but in respect. "And I do not ask you to fall," he said. "I only ask you to stand without the mask." The queen's breath caught, her hands trembling though she hid them in her cloak. The mask of pride still covered her face, but beneath it, cracks spread, cracks that no force in the galaxy could heal. For the first time in her reign, the queen felt not anger, not hatred, but fear. Fear not of the human, but of herself. Fear of what she might become if the mask she had worn for centuries truly broke. The turning point. The queen had tried to test his strength, his endurance, his courage, his will. Each time he survived, each time he refused to kneel. But in her heart, she still told herself it was chance, it was luck, it was stubbornness, not greatness. So she prepared one final trial, one that no being in her empire had ever survived. A trial not of skill, not of power, but of sacrifice. The chamber of the last trial was vast, carved deep into the bones of a dead star. Flames rose from cracks in the ground, shadows danced across the walls, and the air carried the scent of fire and death. The court gathered high above, looking down at the arena below, their voices filled with anticipation. "This is where he falls," they whispered. "No one leaves this place alive." The queen stood above them all, her cloak of fire sweeping behind her. She spoke with a voice that shook the stone. "Human, you have walked through every trial, but pride still shields me, and pride still rejects you. This final test will reveal the truth. If you fail, your name will die here. If you succeed, then perhaps fate itself has chosen you." From the shadows, the trial revealed itself. a creature of living flame, a beast born from the heart of the dead star itself. Its body towered higher than palaces, its claws burned brighter than suns, its roar cracked the stone walls around them. Even the strongest of the queen's generals had fled in terror from its presence. The court roared with cruel laughter, certain the human would die before the beast even touched him. But the human stepped forward, his hand resting on the broken steel blade at his side. His body still scarred, his breath heavy, yet his eyes unshaken. He did not roar back at the beast. He did not curse or call himself greater. He only whispered, "So be it," and charged. The clash shook the chamber. The beast's claws tore the ground. Flames engulfed the air, but the human moved, striking not with brute strength, but with precision. He used the walls, the rocks, the beast's own rage against it, cutting, dodging, enduring. Every strike of his blade seemed meaningless against its burning flesh, yet still he fought, refusing to stop, refusing to kneel. The queen watched from above, her heart steady at first, certain he would fall. But as the minutes stretched into hours, as the human staggered yet rose again and again, something inside her shifted. The court shouted for the beast to finish him, yet the queen's lips pressed tight, her hand trembling on her throne. Why did she not want him to fall? Why did her chest tighten each time he stood again? Then it happened. The beast turned its fury not on the human, but on the others, the weak prisoners brought into the arena as bait. They cried out, their chains holding them as the flames roared closer. The human saw them, and in that instant, he had a choice. He could strike at the beast's exposed heart in the fight, win his victory, or he could turn, risk everything, and save the helpless. Without hesitation, he chose the latter. He threw himself between the prisoners and the flames, his body burning as he dragged them to safety. The beast's claws ripped across his side, blood spilling, yet he did not stop. He shouted for them to run, even as his knees buckled, even as the flames consumed the air around him. The queen rose from her throne, her eyes wide, her heart pounding in her chest like a war drum. No one had ever done such a thing in her trials. No one had ever chosen others over victory. The human had been given a chance to claim glory, but he threw it away to save those who were nothing to him. For the first time, the queen felt her pride falter, not from his strength, not from his defiance, but from his heart. The beast roared again, charging for the final strike. The human, half broken, raised his shattered blade once more. He did not fight for himself now, not for survival, not for victory. He fought for those he had saved, for something greater than pride. And with one last strike, timed with the beast's charge, his blade pierced its burning core. The chamber shook, flames burst into the air, and the beast collapsed, its fire dying with a scream that shook the heavens. Silence followed, broken only by the human's ragged breath, his body falling to his knees, his blade shattered to dust. But the prisoners lived, alive because of him, and in that silence, the court stared in disbelief, unable to speak, unable to laugh. The queen stepped forward, her voice caught in her throat, her pride burning like ashes. She looked down at him, not with scorn, not with rejection, but with something she had never given anyone before: respect. For centuries she had declared no male was worthy, no warrior strong enough, no soul unbroken enough to stand before her. But this human had done what no one else dared. He had risked everything not for himself, but for others. Her heart whispered a truth she could not silence. This was no longer about trials. This was no longer about pride. The human had broken through the wall she had built around her heart. And the queen, for the first time in her reign, did not know if she feared it or welcomed it. The human's triumph. The chamber was silent. The beast of fire lay dead, its body collapsing into ash, its roar fading into nothing. The human knelt on the scorched ground, his breath shallow, his skin burned, his blade shattered into dust. And yet, even broken, even bleeding, he still lifted his head, refusing to bow. The court stared in disbelief, their voices lost, their arrogance drowned. For centuries they had watched warriors fall in this place. Kings crumble, lords beg for mercy. But this human had done what none had dared. He had faced the impossible and chosen others before himself. His victory was not carved in power, but in sacrifice, and that truth silenced even the proudest of voices. The queen descended from her throne, each step echoing across the ruined arena. Her cloak of fire trailed behind her, her crown glowing like the heart of a star. The court bowed low, waiting for her judgment. Some expected fury, some expected execution. Others prayed she would restore her pride with his death. But as she drew near, her eyes were not filled with anger. They were filled with something her people had never seen in her gaze before. She stopped before him, her shadow falling across his broken form. For a long moment, she said nothing, her heart fighting a war her pride could not win. At last, her voice came, softer than the court had ever heard. You should be dead, human, yet you still rise. You should have sought victory, yet you chose others. Why? The human, weak but unshaken, met her eyes once more. His voice was ragged but steady. Because strength is not pride, queen, it is not crowns or power. It is the choice to protect, even when you have nothing left. It is standing not above others, but with them. The words struck her deeper than any blade. Her mask of pride trembled. The wall she had built for centuries cracked wide. For so long she had declared no male was worthy, no soul strong enough to stand by her side. But this human had done more than stand. He had shown her a strength greater than any empire. And in that moment, she knew the truth. The queen fell silent, the weight of the galaxy pressing down on her chest. Her people watched, breathless, waiting for her to crush him, to reject him as she had all the others. But instead, the impossible happened. The queen bent her knee, lowering herself before the human. Her cloak brushed the scorched stone. Her head bowed, not in defeat, but in respect. Gasps erupted across the court, cries of disbelief echoing through the chamber. Their queen, the one who had rejected kings, who had destroyed gods, who had bowed to no one, was kneeling before a human. The human's eyes widened, but he did not speak. He simply watched as the most powerful being in the galaxy gave him what no one had ever received. The queen lifted her gaze, her voice steady but softer than it had ever been. You have broken my pride, human, not with strength, not with crowns, but with truth, with sacrifice, with a will I could not shatter. For the first time, I have found one I cannot reject. For the first time, I have found one worthy. The court fell silent. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. The legend of the alien queen had been rewritten in that single moment. She was no longer untouchable, no longer hidden behind her pride. She had chosen to bow not to power, but to respect. The human struggled to rise, his body trembling, but he stood before her. He did not gloat. He did not claim victory. He only offered his hand, scarred and bloodied. The queen stared at it, her heart burning, then placed her hand in his. It was not the gesture of conqueror and conquered, but of equals. And so it was that the galaxy witnessed the impossible. The alien queen, who had rejected every male, every challenger, every suitor, had finally chosen. Not a warlord, not a king, not a god, but a human. A creature of fragile flesh, yet with a will stronger than stars. The story spread beyond her empire, across the stars. Worlds whispered the day the queen bowed, not in shame, but in respect. The day a human broke the pride of a ruler who thought herself unbreakable. And though the future remained uncertain, whether they would stand as partners, as rivals, or as something greater, the galaxy would never forget. For in the end, it was not power that triumphed, not fear, not arrogance. It was truth, it was sacrifice, it was will, and it was human,